Welcome to Responsible Chicken Breeding. My name's Karen, and I'm here with APA Judge and passionate poultryman Jim Atkins. We are going live to talk chickens, build community, and hopefully inspire you to bring out the best in your birds.
Those are the exact same words every time that you come on.
They're trying to be. Let's see if we can really do it.
Sometimes the passion varies depending on, what's happening in the chicken world. But generally, I am very passionate about chickens and turkeys and geese and ducks.
How about guineas?
I don't like guineas. There's a lot of people who love guineas. And guess what? Now we have to judge them. Sometime in the last, 20 years, now they've added them into the standard of perfection, and now we have to judge guineas. I remember judging at the Kentucky State Fair, and the other judge that I was working with, he found a great guinea. He's like, Jim, we need to consider this guinea to be the champion of the whole show. I'm like, are you kidding me? A guinea? There was like hundreds of awesome bantams and large fowl and waterfowl, but we picked a guinea. I think it was champion of the show, or at least reserve champion of the show. But anyways, guineas is a whole nother subject for a whole nother day, right?
I have to say, though, seems like they're in the standard that they should at least be, equally considered.
They get a chance. Hey, I learned from my mentors. You give every bird a chance. You go back and you look at the turkeys, and a lot of times if there's only one or two of them, they're way back in the corner of a poultry show or at the state fair or a county fair or whatever. But I give them all a chance. I do the best we can to give them all a chance.
All right.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. How are you today?
I'm doing all right. It's getting a little warmer here in North Carolina. How's it doing up there by you?
We're supposed to be 70 today, 70. And I just got back. I was over at my birds and wanted to make sure they had fresh water. And it's heating up a little bit. Southern West Virginia is getting a little bit warm. Yep. Yeah. Right here in those, and those, my lovely New Hampshires and the Australorps, they're like, we don't like heat. They're kind of got a little more meat on them. So takes a little bit more to carry that body around in the heat.
All right. Well, we've got a lot to do today, and we have
we were talking about we got to catch up. We build community by talking about each other's lives. How are your birds? Give me the short answer. How are the reds?
They're doing okay. They're actually
I
think they're liking the warmer weather so far. So
and you set some eggs recently.
Yes. It's time finally. I started late this year, but they're in the incubator. So.
That's awesome. And if I remember correctly, you've got a number of pairs that you've paired up to do some pedigree breeding.
Exactly. Almost all pedigree mating this year. So I'm excited about that. I can't wait to be able to fill out the mother and just have the mother on that line. So I'm so excited.
Yeah. And I get to learn from all the stuff you're going to learn.
I don't know. Yeah. I'll probably share.
Yeah.
I don't think you will stop me from sharing.
You will share. So let's jump in. We're talking Delawares today, and then we have a friend of ours, Jeff Mattocks, a little later in the show. Is that the plan?
That's the plan.
Hallelujah. Ha. All right, people, greetings. We are talking Delaware chickens. Of course, I've been talking about how every breed of chicken was developed in a specific region with a specific purpose. All right, so obviously, if you are at all familiar with the 50 states across the United States, and referring to the the lovely Northeast. Seems like all really, really cool chickens have come out of the Northeast part of the United States. That's where, we talked last week about the New Hampshire and and you remember Rhode Island Reds. That's the state bird in the state of Rhode Island. And you maybe didn't know this, but Wyandottes were developed in upstate New York. And seems like a lot of really, really cool chickens have come out of the Northeast part of the United States. And so Delaware chickens obviously were developed in Delaware. And let me just I'm going to spend the next few minutes, maybe 15 minutes, talking about Delawares. I'm going to show you some pictures and talk a little bit about this breed. I also want you to remember, matter of fact, I'm going to say this so often, you're probably going to get sick of it. All right. We refer to these most American breeds of chickens. We refer to them as dual purpose breeds. Means they're good for both meat and eggs. But every breed, except for a very, very few, every breed had a primary purpose. And Delawares, believe it or not, Delawares were developed originally to be a meat broiler. A meat broiler. That was them. They're supposed to be, I mentioned this last week with the New Hampshires, that the Delaware chicken and the New Hampshire chicken were one of the top two meat birds in the 40s, right on till about 1950, when the Cornish cross first came on the scene. And actually it was being worked on and developed in the 40s, but Delawares and New Hampshires were the top two meat birds. So let me talk to you a little bit about them. First, let me give you a little bit of background. We started working with Delawares in the Sustainable Poultry Network in the spring of 2011. And I was living in Western North Carolina, and I knew we wanted to put some concentrated effort into restoring. I want you to understand that term, restoring the Delaware to be a broiler. Because here's what has happened over the last 50 years, probably. The Delaware is no longer good for meat. It's no longer good for meat. It's turned into an egg-laying machine. They're very popular, and people are like, I raise Delawares, and I get my Delawares from the hatchery because they're great laying chickens. Well, when we started Sustainable Poultry Network in 2010, we grabbed some genetics from about 1, 2, 3, or 4 different places to try and restore the Delaware to being a broiler, a meat chicken. And we've actually made some very, very good progress. So let me tell you a little bit more about that. So as you know, the Delawares, we talk about the standard of perfection. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I am a huge advocate of the American Poultry Association. I've been a life member since I was a teenager. And the Delaware is in the standard of perfection. It was brought into the standard, accepted into the standard of perfection in 1952. 1952. That's because it was a very, very popular chicken, in the meat industry. So let me just give you a little bit of details of the history. The Delaware was originally called the Indian Rivers, and they were developed by a gentleman by the name of George Ellis. George Ellis was his name, and he lived in Delaware. I know you find that shocking, but he lived in Delaware. In 1940 is about when he started developing them, and they were used, as I said, they were used for production of broilers. The breed originated, this is so cool. You will love this piece of history from the Delawares. The breed originated from crosses of Barred Plymouth Rock roosters, males, Barred Plymouth Rock males on New Hampshire females. Now, I'm going to come back and explain something to you about Plymouth Rock, Barred Plymouth Rock male, New Hampshire females. All right, now I'll come back to that. And when they crossed the two, a few of the off-colored sports that were produced were almost white. They were almost white, similar to, well, they had black barring on the hackles and black barring on the primaries and the secondaries and the tails, and you can see that in many, many pictures that you look at. So this coloration, it's very similar to the Colombian color pattern, or a Colombian color pattern with a barred color pattern, but the barring is substituting for the black sections. And so for about, I don't know, probably 20 years, the Delaware and the Delaware New Hampshire cross were the most popular, as I mentioned, broilers on the Delmarva Peninsula. By the way, if you didn't know that, it's a huge, huge poultry production area up on the Delmarva Peninsula. And so the Delawares had this amazing ability to produce offspring with predominantly white feathering. Now, you think about this, okay? When you think about the broiler industry, 99.9% of all the broilers around the globe are white, because when we pluck feathers, when there's just minimal white pin feathers on a Delaware, they're a lot harder to see. If you use a black feathered bird or a brown feathered bird, the pin feathers will be very obvious. And people are like, oh, there's something wrong with the chicken. It's got a black pin feather. Actually won't hurt a thing. There's white birds have them as well. But that was one of the attractions of the Delaware. And this was obviously an advantage for the carcass appearance, because white feathers don't leave dark spots, as I just said. And so both the Delaware and the Delaware New Hampshire were replaced in the 1950s with the Cornish cross. Now, let me just give you a little bit more history on this. Though its economic dominance was short-lived, and it was short-lived because of the Cornish cross, because of the faster-growing Cornish cross broilers. But the Delaware still makes an excellent dual-purpose breed. And as we have, I'll just tell you, when we started developing and redeveloping and improving them through selective breeding over the last 10, 11 years, about 10 years, the egg production's been great. It's been very, very good. Matter of fact, the Delaware flocks that I've handled, that I'm familiar with, have been excellent egg producers. But what we've really worked hard on is improving the quality of the meat and the quality of the carcass specifically. And so they're a meat bird. They can be calm and have a very friendly disposition. And I will tell you, as we have worked with the Delawares over the years, we've had some aggressive males. Now, the reason I want to mention this here is because this was a pretty big issue in our Delaware breeding. I always say, remember this. Remember, aggressive fathers produce aggressive sons. So if you have an aggressive cock bird, an old bird, a male bird, and he's aggressive, he will produce sons that are aggressive. So we've selected those out, and you just want to be extremely careful with that. So the breed is still noted. The breed is still noted for rapid growth and fast feathering of the chicks. Let me give you another note. You might write this down if you're really interested in Delawares. Of all standard breeds of poultry, the Delaware, if you look throughout the standard of perfection, the Delaware was intended to be the fastest growing, to be ready for a good meat carcass at about 12 to 14 weeks. Now, I'm going to make a bold statement here because I'm passionate about it, and that is that my convictions are that we want nothing less than 12 weeks to be included in a slow growing, or actually I would use the term a more normal growing chicken. A fast growing broiler of 37 days in North America is not normal. And I'm not going to go too far down that rabbit trail, but I want to mention the fact that the Delawares in their heyday were the fastest growing broiler at about 12 to 14 weeks. Now, I also want a couple of things I want you to remember. All right. Their skin color. Skin color is yellow. The eggshell color is brown. The comb, you can see it in the pictures. The comb is a single comb. It's a single comb. Shouldn't have any other kind of comb. And you can look in the standard weights. By the way, paying attention in order for you, don't miss this. If you think you are the master of Delaware breeders or you're interested, if you want to restore the bird to be what it once was, you must commit to making sure that you are selectively breeding to their weights. Look in the standard. The cockbirds are 8.5 pounds. The hens are 6.5 pounds. The cockerels are 7.5 pounds. And the pullets are 5.5 pounds. And if you want to breed proper original Delawares, you must make sure that you commit to weighing the birds. The minimum weighing that I would encourage you to consider, the minimum. Now, there's some of you who are OCD, and you're like, you're going to weigh them every week, and you're going to put them in a spreadsheet, and you're going to keep track of all the details.
I can hear you. You should stop talking about me like that.
Actually, Karen is very, very good at this. But the minimum that you should weigh your Delawares, I would say, is 6 weeks and 12 weeks, or the very worst case scenario, 7 weeks and 14 weeks. And compare those weights and select your next generation. This is responsible chicken breeding. And so you're like, Jim, you haven't even talked about color. You got to remember this. I will preach this till the very end. You build a barn and then you paint it. The type and the body of a Delaware is the most important thing before you ever put color on it. So you got to keep track of those shallow breasts and sometimes high tails and flat breasts on the males. And you deal with the same thing with the New Hampshires, where you get some of the white enamel in the earlobes. You don't want that. You don't want birds that are high up on their legs. You want birds that are shorter to the ground. Now, let me just talk about let's see. Actually, I can use these girls. These are some of Greg Westman's birds, and he's up in the Northeast. I think he's actually live on here. But you'll notice, I want you to notice on Greg's birds, there's what we call a short body. I used the term cobby last week with Ed Mongold, and then Karen came on and she's like, what's cobby mean? You know what? A bird that's used for meat has a shorter bodied bird, and it has depth of body, just like those Cornish cross meat birds that you see in the grocery store. They're short and wide, short bodied and length and wide, or in length and wide across the shoulders and the wings. And so those are some things that you want to keep in mind. So, you know, I think, let me just say this about color. You do want to fix the color, and the color is very important. And the standard of perfection will tell us how the color should look. It tells us, explains it. I do want you to notice, even on Greg's birds here, so often in both the males and the females, the black barring from the tails, from the cape or the neck feathers, it bleeds down into the rest of the body of the bird. You'll notice in this bird that there isn't, in Greg's birds, there's no bleeding of black going down over into the breast or across the back or into the wing, across the wings. They have very good color. Now, I will tell you, I haven't had the privilege of handling Greg's birds, but he and I have talked on the phone, and I know that he's a passionate breeder. We need to get him on here and talk about his Delawares. But color is, you have to work with it and you have to select for it. But I will tell you this happens so much in the chicken world. And I just realized time flies. Here's a good silhouette of the body. But in the chicken world, we tend to fix the color before we fix the body. And so you got to fix the body first and then fix the color. And you do that through proper selection of good body type with those weights. And obviously, one of the most important things, Karen, you've got to always maintain vigor, maintain vitality. And, I hope it would be awesome if we could gain some more Delaware breeders across the United States who would be involved in responsible chicken breeding. So where are we at, Miss Karen? Oh, well, yeah, there's the silhouettes.
I'm going to let you talk about, we apologize, but the Delawares were admitted into the standard late enough that we cannot show you any of the standard pictures. So you have to look at your own standards for that.
Yeah, that's quite the picture there. That's major.
That's Technicolor glitchy Delaware.
But you can just see the type. You can see the type a little bit. Go to the next picture then.
All right. So,
yeah. So how much, are we doing okay? Can I comment a little on these?
A little bit. Yep.
All right. So this is, these are some of those Delawares that we started working with in 2011. And I've yet to have a perfect picture, but I'll tell you why I like these birds. Let's talk about the hen in number 2 first. You may say, oh, her tail looks a little pinched. Well, this was a day we were doing selection at Intended Way Farm in Pilot Mountain, North Carolina. And actually, that number 2 female has a phenomenal body. She had decent color, had a very good head, but she is lacking a little bit of what we would refer to as spread in the tail, at least in the picture. But she had a good body. And the male in picture number 1, who's a little bit blocked by that female, his stance, his position, his body was absolutely outstanding. Now, he was bleeding. You can see a little bit of the black bleeding across his saddle, but he had a great head. Speaking of heads, don't we have a head shot, Karen?
We do.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, she's number 3 is a great girl. Let's, for the sake of time, why don't you jump me? There we go. Now, let me just tell you this, especially if you're thinking about using or developing a Delaware for meat. This number 5, picture number 5. I don't know if it's the same head, different head.
Different
It's
head.
a different head. Yeah,
Years
number
apart.
5. I love that head. Now, you remember this. Now, I go down this rabbit trail, and we're not doing a selection detail, but the head of a chicken will tell you everything. I mean, it determines what the rest of the bird is going to be. If you have a wide skull on a Delaware, you will have a wide body. You have a narrow skull, and you will have a narrow body. It's almost guaranteed. I love the balance on this number 5, the comb, the beak, the eye set, the width of skull. Obviously, you can't see it, but it is an excellent skull. And if you have a good head, every book you read on selection, go and read Call of the Hen by, what's his name, Walter Hogan. Is that right, Karen?
Yep.
And he talks about the value of the head. Go read all the dead guy books pre-1950, and they talk about the value of the head. And it's especially important on a meat bird, on a Delaware that was intended to be a meat bird. So, Karen, I could go on and on, but we have so much more to do.
That's right.
Do you want? Is there anything else you want me to comment here?
No, you're good. Tell us a little bit about in the show world. Do you see a lot of Delawares when you're judging?
No, you don't see a lot of Delawares. There are a few people, and I would say less than a dozen who are really committed to Delawares and breeding them. Now, there's probably more out in up the hollers in West Virginia, and they're not on social media, but there's not a ton of them. And I'll just tell you, I don't remember. Greg probably knows this better than I do. I don't remember the last time I saw a Delaware win Champion American or Reserve Champion American, or even it's just been a while since I've seen a good lineup of Delawares in the show. But I know that there's several people working on them, so that's good. That's a great question.
All right. Well, we'll wrap this thing up here. So we'll see you in a minute.
Hey, where'd you go? Oh, you were just doing your little production thing there.
That's right.
Hey, how did I do on that? Did you feel okay?
We're still live. Let's not discuss your performance. We'll do that later.
Listen,
who are we going to see next?
Hey, Mr. Jeff Mattocks. Let me tell you a little bit. Well, I have learned more about feeding chickens from my friend Jeff Mattocks, and I was trying to think when Jeff and I met, but anyways, I'm excited to, you will, especially if you're thinking of birds being in production for both eggs and meat, but since we're talking about Delawares, you want good meat? Oh, it's so influenced by what you feed them. So let's bring Jeff into this. Mr. Jeff.
How you doing?
Hey, I saw you smirking when I was doing the introduction about you.
Did you?
Yeah, I think you were just excited.
Yeah. I mean,
I was trying to think.
We met at a Mother Earth News Fair in
PA.
Seven Springs, PA, about 7 or 8 years ago.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember that conversation. And then there was a couple of years when we didn't chat, and I think we were just busy doing things. And then I ran into you in Ohio, remember? And you were like, Jim, why are we not working together? And I'm like, I don't know, but no one knows what you know. And the more we talked, and then we started working very closely together. And one of the things, Jeff wrote a great little book on feeds and feeding. And then along the way, but you don't have the one with the SPN logo on it, but that's okay.
This is the most recent. He's been through a lot of iterations, but it's in here.
I know.
Right, Jeff?
But
it's still in here.
Yeah. But what I appreciated is somewhere along the way, and it's right after that last time we were together, when we reconnected 7 years ago or whatever, that Jeff took and modified or added to his book on feeding standard bred poultry and put recipes in there. It's a great resource. And Jeff, I have taken those books not only all over the United States, but you are famous in multiple African countries. And they're like, so Jeff, let me jump in. One of the conversations you and I've had many, many times, and I preach this, and you've helped me so much with this. When we talk about animal protein, this has happened to me numerous times. When I go onto a farm and I'm coaching or I'm helping people do selection with standard bred birds, and I lift their birds, and I'm like, I'm thinking in my head, this bird weighs nothing. There's nothing here. What are you feeding these birds? That's what I'm thinking. Now I try to be a gracious coach and not make these people feel like they're really screwing up. But and then I go on and they're feeding extremely high-priced organic feed, and the feed doesn't have a proper protein in it. And specifically, I'm thinking of animal protein, because one of the things that you've taught me, and I like that. Yes, they call him the nutrition wizard. And Jeff, the thing that I really picked up over the years from you and reading is all these birds, all the old historical breeds of poultry were developed when animal protein, they're the dairymen. So they were feeding a lot of milk and they were feeding a lot of excess meat to help really develop these birds to be productive, both for meat and eggs. And so you remember all those conversations we had along the way?
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, you like the old dead guy books, and so do I. And I've got a bookshelf here full of nutritional guides of old dead guys, right? And, those diets had large amounts of meat and bone meal in them, right? And that was, so they got their calcium from it, their phosphorus from it, and part of their protein from it. And now, this day and age, for some reason, people think that their chicken needs to be vegetarian fed. Well, I'm here to tell you, anybody listening, there is no such thing as a vegetarian chicken, right? So they're either going to eat each other or you're going to feed them some meat type protein, right? When you run out of insects and you run out of small reptiles, they have that beak designed to tear flesh. Okay, it's not just for gathering seeds and scratching in the dirt. And
they like steak just like you and me, don't they?
Throw one out on the ground someday, see how long it lasts, because they'll put down a steak faster than most people.
A lot of people don't know this, Karen, but chickens are drawn to red things. That's why, as Jeff said, when they're bleeding, when they see blood, they eat each other. Chickens are cannibalistic, especially when they're malnourished. Now, there's other reasons, and I've learned this from Jeff and others, but a lot of times it's malnourishment because they're not getting that protein. And it's also why, somebody just didn't decide, hey, let's put a red bottom on a water or a feeder. They chose red because it draws birds in. And when you put some red meat on the ground, and all those old timers, so they were feeding tons of meat from hundreds. Jeff, where did the myth of chickens are vegetarians? Where'd that come from?
As our society advanced, or whatever you declined, however you want to refer to it,
Probably declined.
Right. So the consumer thought it was wrong to feed, animal waste byproducts back to their chickens. So it was taken out of the diet. And look, and I'm not going to argue that point, because all of your commercial meat and bone meals are coming from commercially raised, what we call CAFOs, high confinement, commercially, animals in small proximity. They're not necessarily healthy animals. When the old dead guys wrote their books, right?
Yeah.
The farmer was keeping his own fat and meat scraps and tallow and bone and so on that he was feeding back to his chicken. Well, that's not the case anymore. Okay. Yeah. Now you have no idea where that meat scrap comes from. And that's why, you and Karen have heard me time and time again, I talk about using fish meal, because it's a cleaner source of protein. It hasn't gone through the human system of being raised and fed awful things and then, ground back up and fed back to animals multiple times.
Yeah.
Look.
Yeah, and that's some of the myth out there too, is people are concerned the way the meat source was raised, and that's legitimate, I suppose, isn't it?
It is. It is. Even though people are not going to understand this or take this the right way, you could pick up some roadkill on your way home tonight, throw it over the fence into your chicken yard, and your chickens love meat that well that they don't really care where it comes from. But
hey, they'll eat the maggots and everything else that's in there.
Right. As a conscientious, person, that's why I went to the fish meal side. And there's all kinds of different fish meals out there too. So people need to understand, right? So there's catfish farming down in the South, and you can get a byproduct off of that. And it's not really that nutritious, but it's still called fish meal. Then there's menhaden fish meal caught out of the Gulf and the Atlantic. That's a whole fish product, but there's no regulatory system to monitor how much is being harvested or over harvested or whatever. So those guys, they start here in April and they're going to fish hard till October, November, and they're going to take as much as they get. Now,
Jeff, let's back up for a minute. What are some of these, and they're non-organic and organic and non-organic and GMO and non-GMO, but what are some of the things that, and I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I want to clarify the things they try to replace fish meal or a bone meal with, like peas, right?
Well, peas are another form of protein. And then depending on where you live, I see a lot of people using peas. And if they actually knew the nutritional componentry, if you will, the breakdown of peas would be the last thing they would be choosing. The nutritional profile on peas is very poor.
Yeah.
Look, chickens, and I'm going to throw pigs in here, both of them being an omnivore type creature, want some meat in their diet, right?
Yeah.
And there's no doubt about it. They want meat in their diet. And so what they're after actually is a higher methionine level, which is an amino acid. They're going to get a higher cysteine level. They're going to get the amino acid profile of meat, good meat, is much more in tune with what an animal or what a chicken really needs. And how we got away from that, I really don't know. Because people go out and see their...
Simplify it. You've got plant protein resources and animal protein resources, and you cannot, if you're going to grow the bird out properly, you cannot completely remove some kind of meat protein source. Are you seeing it happen much?
Yeah. So what we've done now is in a laboratory under science, with science, is we've duplicated amino acids synthetically, and we throw those back into the diet to to hit the numbers, right? Just to get it in that qualified range.
Yeah.
But we did a field trial here at Fertrell, and we did a amino acids balance. We did a group of Cornish cross. Don't hold it against me, against another group. But we did one group with fish meal, one group without. And we had a half a pound, 8 ounces of additional carcass weight. Everything else was the same. Protein was the same. Amino acids were the same. They were side by side. They started the same day. The whole bit, right? It is scientific as you can do outside of a university.
Yeah.
And so they definitely responded to meat type protein. I said, it's another half a pound of carcass weight. And if you're selling meat, that's $2. That's $2 a chicken, in my world.
Yeah.
And so anyway, go ahead.
Did we really hit on, Karen, what would you say, kind of the summary, Jeff, of benefits of fish meal?
What I really like the most is the birds are calmer. They're less likely to cannibalize and eat feathers, right? So they're not going to be going after each other. Yeah. You're not going to hear the same level of strife and disorder in that chicken coop, with them fearing for their life. They're absolutely going to perform better. But in this world that we're talking about here today, responsible, poultry breeding, even over to the show side, you are never going to get the same feather quality, and you're never going to get the same body conformation without using a meat type protein.
I agree.
Guaranteed. Like you talked about picking up a bird, fat doesn't weigh the same as muscle does.
Yeah.
You pick up a bird that's fed right, it's rock solid. There's hardly fat.
Yeah.
So you're getting ready to harvest the bird for meat, you shouldn't feel any fat in that abdomen region. In all honesty, you don't want to feel a fatty bird.
Yeah.
Because it's not a productive bird.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Karen, what else do we want to ask Jeff?
And he started to talk about it earlier, but I would like to talk about the different kinds of fish meal, because that's what I discovered when I started looking for people to make my custom rations that you designed. What kind of fish meal they were planning on putting in was a huge variation between the different manufacturers.
There is. Yeah, you're right. And the majority of what we see here in the U.S. that's available to, smaller farmers and local feed mills is the Menhaden fish meal. Okay. So, if you live on the coast, you call it bunker. And Menhaden will be 60 to 62% protein, right around that 10% fat. I don't have any issues with the Menhaden fish meal. I don't like the preservatives that most companies put on it. The common preservative is thoxyquin. Thoxyquin's been linked to a lot of skin disorders, cats, horses. So, and here's the weird thing, right? They're allowed to use it, and it's a known carcinogenic. Right? It's absolutely known carcinogenic, right? So, if you can get a naturally preserved Menhaden, that's fine. It's a good one. But the catfish is being fed just like your chicken is, a bunch of corn, a bunch of soy, a bunch of whatever. They're taking lips and tails and grinding it up and turning it into a meal. Most of the time it won't make 60%, but the amino acid profile of catfish is not, it's not what we're looking for, because the catfish was fed in a farm environment with a bunch of grains. So its methionine level and its lysine level and its cysteine level are not going to be the same as a wild harvested. So I would say you definitely want a wild harvested. You got to be careful what the fat percent of that fish meal is. Like my slide says here is the high fat, like herrings and anchovy. You're going to have a much higher risk of off flavoring your eggs and your.
And you like eating those, don't you?
I'm one of those. There's about 1 in 100 people who can taste fishiness in a chicken, even at controlled levels, right? And unfortunately, I'm one of those people, because I eat the dark meat at my house, and I can I can smell it and taste it.
Dude, I've tasted it before. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's really strange, and I mean it's not a lot of fun. I mean, you're sitting down to eat chicken, and it smells like fish. That's not a good thing. So
yeah.
And more recently, Karen, I got kind of lucky, and I fell into a circumstances. We're actually now offering a Asian carp meal, and there's a bunch of fishermen in Illinois region working off of like the Ohio River and a bunch of tributaries, but they're catching the invasive Asian carp, which is destroying our waterways, right? Go to YouTube and watch some of these videos, but the Asian carp is the one that flies up out of the water, beats you to death, and jumps in your boat. And so
you would
now
know
working.
You're a fisherman.
Yeah. You need to go check out the Asian carp videos on YouTube because they are crazy, right?
Wow.
You drive through a school of them, they're all flying out of the water and just doing.
So Jeff,
anyway,
what about, tell us about fish meal as a supplement to existing feed.
Yeah, I mean, like if the feed that you're going to probably be able to go buy at your local farm store, whatever it is. And I'm not going to pick on anybody, today, because they're still providing us a great service. But it doesn't have any meat protein in it, right? They're not going to put meat protein in there. There's too many people that object to it. B, it's going to be down in that 16% protein range. And for breeders, especially if you're looking for good hatchability through that breeding window, it's not going to have enough protein. It's not going to have the right amino acids. So that's where adding about 2% by weight a fish meal to an existing ration.
Yeah.
People are going to see a drastic improvement in their bird. And really think about doing this coming out of the molt. Okay. So they can get that better plumage. They can get a better looking bird.
Yeah.
Get those reproductive organs functioning at a higher level, just everything turns around. Yeah. It's really an amazing transformation. I challenge anybody who listens to this, try a little fish meal, keep a control group, try a little fish meal. Tell me in 3 months what you saw, because
don't give them too much or you'll end up tasting fishy.
Yeah. But during the breeding season, you're more worried about hatching chicks than you are eating eggs. Yeah. So actually during the hatch, you can go as high as 4% to 5% of the diet. And, you're getting omega-3s out of it. You're getting better methionine out of it. The birds are actually going to stay a little bit calmer because that early lay cycle, they tend to be a little high strung and hyper, just because of things changing in their body. So it's going to keep them calmer. You're going to see huge differences. But
somebody says the Illinois River is jacked up with Asian carp.
I'm trying to do my part and help the environment. So
you make it sound easy. Just go grab some fish meal and throw it on there. Where are we buying this magical fish meal that's not catfish? That's not. I found it almost impossible to find a fish meal that you approved of.
Yeah, it's not easy. Believe it or not, a lot of the fish meal is actually being used in dairy or ruminant feeds to get that methionine level, because we figured out that we need methionine in ruminant feeds as well. You ask around, you look around. If you can't find somebody, you can always get a hold of us at Fertrell, and we'll tell you the nearest dealer to you. Fish meal has a 12-month shelf life. So if you get it, you keep it in a good airtight container, break it down into some smaller packages. You can throw some in the freezer if you want. Just sprinkle some on top of the feed every day. And don't free choice it, because they're just going to stand there and eat it like candy. And,
then your ration's not quite so balanced anymore.
Yeah.
No.
No. Yeah, that's what I ended up. You ended up sending me to Reedy Fork.
Reedy Fork. Yeah.
Reedy Fork Farm. So I now order the Fertrell. And I was surprised this last time when the bag came and it was the carp meal.
Yep.
I was like, well, I guess it's got their label on it. I don't think anybody faked it. So
No, it's our label. And, I've done all the amino acid profiles. I sent it off, got it tested. If you're ever curious to see how it compares, I can send it to you. The protein's right there between 60 and 62, the same amino acid profiles, the same fat profiles. I wouldn't have brought it on board if I couldn't interchange them like that, because it just creates a huge confusion for folks. And, and that's numbers that they don't work with every day. That.
Well, and I appreciate how Fertrell labels their bags with a straightforward date that it was made. It's not this secret code I have to try to decipher. It just can tell right away how fresh it is.
You can tell exactly how fresh it is. It's on every bag or every tag.
How long have you been bagging up the fish meal like this, Jeff?
Well, for years, I usually got my fish meal delivered to me already in the 50-pound bags. Now, last year, when I started working with the Asian carp guys out of Illinois, he didn't have bagging equipment. So I almost had a revolt or a strike here at Fertrell. My guys didn't like bagging fish meal, but we did bag off 4 truckloads last year. Yeah, they were all ready to quit. There's no amount of money that makes you want to bag fish meal for a living. Let me tell you, you go home smelling like it, and you taste it forever, and
you wake up smelling like it, and you get out of the shower smelling like it.
Yeah, so not an enjoyable task.
What now? What are the bag sizes? Still 50s?
Yeah, everything's still 50-pound bags. So.
Yeah, this is a side note. Because anything of yours that are Fertrell that I get, I go to North Carolina. Do we have anybody dealing it in West Virginia?
No.
We need to start that.
I don't disagree with you.
What about Eastern Kentucky?
Not yet.
Cool. That's good to know. We'll have to have a little offline conversation about that.
Yeah.
Sounds like an opportunity for you to start. Of course, you're not near anything. So.
Well, that's the point.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who might use it who are not close to anything where we live. So,
all right, I'm going to have to ask Jeff directly because he's not subtly bringing it up. But so if we don't want to go buy just straight fish meal, is there any other, I don't know, say Breeders' Show supplement that
I know
people can purchase?
Aaron, I don't do self promotion very well. You know that, so you're going to have to bring it up. But yes, yeah. So for breeders and show poultry, late last summer, I came out with the Poultry Show and Breeder Supplement, and the protein in that is coming from fish meal, right? I've also spiked it with extra lysine, methionine, probiotics, and added vitamins. So this was designed to go with that local feed store's feed, and you feed 1 teaspoon per bird per day, and that brings it up to breeder feed spec or show bird spec. We've been field trialing it. Well, we're past field trialing it, but we're still field trialing it now since the end of July last year is when this kind of kicked off. All the feedback's been really good, except for Karen. Yeah. But you had a well-balanced diet, so you did perfect. I was hoping you didn't see anything.
So Jeff, this is a supplement for those who are doing responsible chicken breeding.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it you can get a 10-pound bag for $49. I know that sounds like a lot, and you can get a 40-pound bag delivered to you for $149, and it works out to about 2.5 to 3 cents per chicken. So, it's not a huge expense.
Nice.
And it brings regular old, down the road feed, like right up to spec, and it takes about 10 days. You're going to start seeing a big difference in your birds. And first you see the personality change. Then you see the activity level change. And then depending on where they're at in their plumage cycle, as far as molt, not molt, but bring them out of the molt with some of this in there, and you'll see huge differences in plumage.
Well, I'm gonna preach this until I'm blue in the face, Karen, that we have people. Responsible chicken breeding has everything to do with what you feed them. That's why, we're only 3 shows in, episode 3, and Jeff is on here, because you can get good genetics and you can say, I've got the best birds from so and so, and they've won championships or did this or did that. But if you're not feeding the birds properly, even when I judge them and they're in the showroom, so this is huge importance, and people need to pay attention. You can have great birds and not feed them well, and I applaud Jeff, because when he and I really connected, and his dead guy books are about this thick, though. Only Jeff can read them. I mean, other people can read them, but you got to be real chicken feed grain smart. And
I'm leaving the label up here on the screen because coincidentally there happens to be a Delaware on the label for the the supplement.
Yeah. Bottom
There we
left
go.
corner. Yep.
Yeah.
From Don Ridge. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
That's cool.
he took pictures from some. So we've got the Erminet from Matt Hemmer, and Jeff, you go through them, all the different.
Well, and their game fowl, their Erminets are up top, and then there's we got game fowl on the left is Kenny Triano's, and the white game on the right is Frank Bradley's, and so I don't remember who the hen and I think it's Kenny's down on the bottom right. Where the hen and that's Kenny's hen and cockerel. So
Nice.
I just want to give him credit because I thought your label was very attractive.
And their names are on the label, right? It tells you where those photographs come from. So
yeah.
I just didn't go take them from photo stock somewhere, and
All right. Well, we've made it sound like fish meal is a miracle, and Jim touched on it a little bit. But is there something what it cannot be used for? I mean, if your chicken's sick, do you give it fish meal? Is there limitations of power?
I mean, it's not a health aid for a sick chicken, right? It is part of proper nutrition, right? It is part of a proper diet, and and it transforms chickens to the next level. There's no doubt about it, right? And so, but it's not like I said, it's not going to heal a sick chicken. Now, you have a batch.
Jeff, we have preached this forever and ever and ever, and you've been a part of this. Take good care of it, feed it properly. Let's be proactive from keeping that bird getting sick. And so when the diet's right, you're going to have less sick chickens. It's not the only thing, but it's a huge factor, right?
It's a huge factor, right? If you start with nutrition first, the chances, you're minimizing the chances of your birds getting sick. Okay. That and some good biosecurity, you pretty well got this thing wrapped up.
Yeah.
But you can't put garbage in and expect, a show chicken to be a grand champion. Right? It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
Well, we've got one question for you, Jeff.
Okay.
So let's get back to that.
Well, while she's pulling that up, Jeff, speaking of red meat, I think the last time Melissa and I were at your place, man, you laid out the steak, but that's been a few years ago. We're due for a steak at Jeff's house.
Venison. Yep.
I remember too. It's a little side note, Karen. I got to connect with Jeff here.
You're all right.
I remember one night too. I showed up there and I'm like, Jeff, I need a good night's sleep. He said, "Here, drink this Fireball." Remember that? You gave me this little shot, a little.
Yeah, he never had Fireball before in his life, so I got him a little Fireball.
I slept good the night. So this question is, how about a meat protein mixture of fish meal and how do you say that? Porcine meat and bone meal?
Yeah, it's pork. It's pork, meat, and bone meal, but it's porcine in this vernacular. And Greg, that's fine. You can do that. Again, our domesticated meats like pork, beef, etc., because of their diets being pretty much corn, soy, and floor sweepings, don't have the best amino acid profiles but they do have good amino acid profiles. They're better than using grain only protein. All right. You want to do a combination, that's fine. I could actually see a combination, a mixture of those being really beneficial, because you're going to hit the wall at about 3%, 3 to 4% of the total diet being fish meal. And if you wanted to go even further with those meat type proteins, you can continue. There's really no for off flavoring with protein, meat, and bone. So there's not, the fish. The only limitation on the fish meal is it's going to make your meat and your eggs taste fishy if you go above about 4% of the diet.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. It's just know that the amino acid profile of commercially raised meat and bone animal or meat animals is not fabulous.
Yeah.
Okay. It's better than just soybeans, but
yeah.
Shaggy wants to know, what does it take to become a Fertrell dealer? That might be more complicated than we can talk about, but if not, let's handle it. Yeah.
Well, so Shaggy, you call in or you get a hold of the folks here at Fertrell. We first off want to know where you're at and what you're interested in. And, if there's nobody really close to you in your area, we'll send you out a packet that describes what we expect out of our dealers, the support that we provide, etc. Kind of gives you all the guidelines. And, as long as there's not a conflict and you're not sitting right beside an existing dealer, then, we open up communications and give it a try.
All right.
Yeah.
Like always, once you start answering questions, people start asking them. So one more. Yeah. So Nick wants to know.
This is a great question. I think.
Go ahead, Jim. You read it.
Well, it's the Dead Guy books, and I kind of mentioned this, Jeff, and you can address it quickly because we are nearing our time. But supplementing with skim milk, what's your opinion? What about whole raw milk and skim milk? And hey, I'm from Wisconsin. I'm a dairyman. I know what Jeff's going to say about this. Go ahead, Jeff.
Skim milk is wonderful, and it is a supplement. Don't look at it as a protein. Now,
right.
dried skim milk is like almost 30% protein, but are we talking about dried? Or are we talking about wet? Now, when you look at it on a wet basis, skim milk and whole milk are between 3 and 4% protein to a chicken, as we do their diets on a as fed or as received basis, not on a dry matter. Now, small amounts of milk periodically, you want to do it a couple times a week, that's great. You're actually feeding the beneficial bacteria in the gut. The birds are going to love it. And I would tell you to do it, so when your feeder fills up with those fines, take the fines out, add a little bit of milk to it, feed it back to them a couple times a week. Works great. Do not feed milk products every day. You will cause fatty livers. Okay. That chicken liver will turn caramel color and get about twice the size of normal. The chicken really is not equipped to digest large amounts of dairy products on a regular basis. Okay? The body, the metabolism just isn't made to do that.
All right. Well, I'm going to let both of you boys go. Get on with your day. And
wait a minute, Jeff.
Go ahead.
Be sure and tell your lovely wife, Tracy, how blessed she is to be married to you. Tell her.
She'll disagree with you, but that's okay.
Jeff, I really appreciate you, and it's good to reconnect. And thank you for all that you're doing in the world of poultry feed, because in my opinion, and that may not be worth anything, but in my opportunities, I will be reminding people that nutrition is a non-negotiable part of being, a responsible chicken breeder. So thanks for all you do. And I appreciate you very much. I'm personally indebted to you for the things that you've taught me over the years. So thank you, my friend.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on. I had a good time.
All right. Okay.
All right. See ya.
Guys.
Bye.